Folks, if you need some new camouflage, don't look any farther than ASIO gear. They have a great line of products that covers everything you could possibly need at a very reasonable price, especially if you use that code ECHO15 that they offer all of our listeners. And if you're worried about it, the stuff got a lifetime warranty, so if something goes wrong with it, they replace it, no questions asked. Go over to ASIOgear.com and check them out. If you need some new broadheads, you got to check out Razor Broadheads. They have an awesome, dependable head that is tough as nails. I've used them for the last 3 years, and the wound channel that these broadheads leave has been really impressive to me. They're super sharp, super accurate, and they offer 20% off if you use the code BTE. So go over to razorbroadheads.com and get you some new broadheads. And then Stealth Outdoors. Hey, if you're not using stealth strips, you're not trying. Get your gear silenced with stealth strips. And then the product's not that expensive anyway, but if you use code BTE10, you get another 10% off. Now, just because it's not expensive doesn't mean it's not good quality stuff. This is the best silencing material on the market, hands down. Go over to stealthoutdoors.com. Hey, and then you got to have some saddle gear that you can use with your stealth strips. The guys over at Latitude make all kinds of great products, and right now on their website, they're offering 20% off everything. Their Method 2 saddle is actually 30% off. And then if you get over there and the sale's over or something, you're listening to this later on, use your code BTE and you go ahead and get 15% off everything. Go over to latitudeoutdoors.com if you need any saddle hunting gear. And finally, a new partner for the show, Hawke Optics. Listen, if you're in the market and you need some new optics, these guys offer a great product at an affordable price. They're also offering everybody 15% off if you use the code BTE. They got a line of everything you would need in all different price points, from rangefinders to binocular rangefinders to spotting scopes to all different types of rifle scopes and even some red dots. So go over to hawkeoptics.com and check them out. Use that code BTE, save you 15%. All my partners are in the description below. Go check them out. All right, let's get to the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show.
What's up, everybody?
How's it going?
We got Mr. Spook Spann on the show tonight to talk about big giant white.
No mister.
No mister.
Yeah, don't age him.
No mister. I'm just Spook.
And then Patrick's on here. Patrick is and Spook share the same state that they live in, so I thought, well, we'll just get Patrick on tonight too. And,
yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Tennessee stuff.
That's right. And then my wife just honked her horn for some reason. Probably one of my boys doing it. That's usually what happens.
There's no telling what's liable to happen to me while I'm on here. So
yeah. I'd say that's what it was. My parents live in the same, like, they're just right outside here, and the boys sometimes ride in the front. Which, sorry, Patrick's a police officer, but they don't get in their car seat with 200 yards from my parents' house, and a lot of times they honk the horn whenever they pull into the driveway.
What do you think I'm gonna do? Drive up there and put your wife in cuffs or something, or write a ticket over some? No, I ain't doing that.
Oh yeah. Anyway, you guys are both from Tennessee, and Spook, I was a big fan of the Monster Bucks back in the day, and you were obviously a regular on some of those videos. So I'm excited to have you on, man.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys having me.
I was going to ask you, maybe you've never been asked this before. You probably have. Where did the name Spook come from? Is that your God-given name?
All the time, and I was born on Halloween night, 9:30 on Halloween night, and the doctor asked my mom what my name was going to be, and she said, "Well, I hadn't decided yet." And he said, "Well, I guess we got us a Spook for now then," and it stuck. By the time she decided 3 or 4 days later what my name was going to be, it was too late. I was already spooked.
That's cool. That's cool. I always wondered that. It's such a unique name, you know. And
it has its ups and downs. We'll put it that way. I played a lot of basketball. I grew up. I played ball all the time and played basketball in, of course, middle school, high school, college, and then on to play. I played like travel, like an independent a semi-pro travel basketball league. So having the name Spook could be interesting sometimes in games with the brothers, but they all loved it.
What'd you call me? No,
I
man,
didn't
it's
think about
funny.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the old days.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. All right, before we get started, Spook, maybe could you give us just an overview of kind of how you got started, if you want to say in the hunting industry or hunting in general, and kind of how you kind of came upon monster bucks, and then obviously your Spook Nation now.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up here in Middle Tennessee, in the country. My dad owned a sawmill lumber company, and my dad loved to hunt and fish. So we had bird dogs when I was a kid. We did a lot of quail hunting. We deer hunted some, but Dad wasn't as hardcore about deer hunting as he was bass fishing and quail hunting. And so as I got older, though, I could tell I was getting into the deer hunting, and I let a couple of big bucks get away when I was young. I started bow hunting when I was 13, and back then in the 70s, I didn't know but 4 or 5 grown men that even owned a bow. So there weren't that many bow hunters, and I got into it. Really quick. I blew a couple opportunities. Typical kid, young, didn't know what I was doing, and man, it just fueled the fire. And so if I wasn't playing ball, I was hunting or fishing with Dad, and so that's kind of how it all started. And then as I got older, I was watching. I see DVDs like Night and Hell and the original Monster Buck, early days and things like that. And I just, I was really, I got all the first editions of North American Whitetail magazine and Dick Idle. And I just, I used to read those articles about Canada, going to Canada, hunting giant whitetails in Texas, and I was just like, I just thought that was like the ultimate dream. And when I got out of college, the first year I got married in 1985, and that very year, the only reason I can remember that was the year because I knew it was the year me and Marty got married. I went to the first ever QDMA meeting in the state of Tennessee, and Dr. Grant Woods was the speaker. And Grant was young, also right out of Clemson, and QDMA was really the very beginning of the quality deer management concept. And he and I ended up sitting on the tailgate of the truck that night until midnight. Everybody left, and we're just talking. And he knew that, I was that person that was going to go overboard with everything when it comes to chasing deer. And I learned at a very young age also. The very first day I ever went bow hunting, I came out early to go to a wild game dinner with my mom and dad, and there was a doe eating in the garden in the peas. Well, I snuck up there. When I got up there, I got within 9 yards of her. And when I started to draw, I looked over in the corner of the garden, and there was a big buck. In my eyes, at 13, he was a booner. He may only been 140, but to me at that time, he was a booner,
Yeah.
And I didn't take my time. I ended up she saw me in blue, and I shot behind him as he took off. But what I learned that day, I told my dad, I was like, I'm back there in the woods hunting, never saw a deer. And I come out here, right here in the field, and there's deer in the garden. I said, and they were eating peas. I said, I want to fix a place just for the deer, So when I was 14, me and Dad built my first food plot. Of course, at the sawmill, we had a dozer, and we had a tractor and a disc. And so I had the equipment to build. So at 14, I was building my first food plot, and I planted clover and wheat and peas in the food plot. And at 14, I started killing deer with a bow, when back then, if you killed a doe with a bow, you was Daniel Boone status, And so I immediately started killing bucks, and that just, it's just like dumping the whole gas truck on the fire. I immediately went to strategizing on some other properties that we had that the sawmill company owned, and I started putting food plots on everything we had. And so I started. I don't know. I've never heard of anybody starting we didn't even call them food plots back then. We called them pea patches.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got out of course, after 85, and I learned about quality deer management and started getting educated on it and became friends with Grant. That's when the acceleration of letting smaller bucks go and just trying to kill mature bucks just really, I just really got into it in my 20s, and which was in the mid 80s and late 80s, and then in the 90s just took it to another level. Of course, I found a really good place to hunt in Western Kentucky, and so then I had, as Tennessee hunting, big bucks in Tennessee is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It was difficult to get guys to pass up deer. It was just back in those days, if it had a 3-inch spike, it died, And so, and it took a 20 plus years to get people to let them get at least 3, And I got a lot of scrutiny, and people got mad at me because I was trying to promote quality deer management, and so, and I was the first one was guilty of saying, boy, he would have been a good one next year.
Yeah.
I got cussed out so many times for saying that to friends, but I was so passionate about it. I just, I had an agenda, and I love to hunt so much. But admittingly, it was easy to go out and kill a 1.5 old or 2.5-year-old deer. And so, I just wanted to take it to the next level. And by then I'd killed enough deer that, I had kind of gotten past to just wanting to kill one stage, and was at the point where, I wanted to, start going to that next level. So every time I would go to that next level to, only waiting on 130s or 140s, and then that lasted a little while, and it just kept escalating from there. And in the meantime, I had gotten into business for myself, buying and selling timber and buying and selling some land, and started doing a little bit of traveling. And I'd always dreamed of, I had a friend that my best friend's grandfather was a big game hunter, and he had sheep mounted in his house and caribou and grizzly bears. And I turkey hunted with him a lot. So I started turkey hunting in the early 80s. I went to the first ever NWTF banquet in the state of Tennessee in Nashville. There was 63 people there. Mm-hmm. And I was the youngest person by probably 30 years.
What year was that when you did that, do you think?
Dude, that had to be in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say. In the 90s is when I started hunting turkeys, and there was nobody hunting turkeys.
Exactly. For the first 15 years I hunted turkeys, I rarely ever encountered anybody except at LBL. Now, I did a lot. We didn't even have turkeys around here. I had to go somewhere else to turkey hunt. I used to go to Shelby Forest.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Turkey hunting some. I got drawn there a few times.
A lot of turkeys come out of Shelby Forest and got, reestablished in places.
Yep. And then I went to LBL a lot. That's basically where I taught myself to turkey hunt. And I met Harold and David there, which was one of the highlights. I knew I was in a good spot when I ran into Harold Knight in the woods.
Yeah.
I was like, I know I'm in a good spot, And
I got to hunt with those guys in Dixon weekend at a friend of ours had a place up there, and I got to hunt with them, man. They're awesome.
Oh, they're awesome.
Yeah,
they're awesome. And I talked to Mr. David at NWTF. I don't know if you saw it on my Facebook. He's in a wheelchair. He's in pretty bad shape, but he knew who I was, and we had a great talk, and it was awesome getting to see him. Yeah, and I hadn't seen him in a few years. They've hunted with me. They've hunted with me on my farm before, and we did some Wounded Warrior stuff together. And then I actually hunted on their place with them deer hunting in Katie's before. Mm-hmm. So we became very good friends. There was a time period there where we were around each other a lot. And it's probably one of the most cherished moments of my hunting career. We were turkey hunting one day with a couple of soldiers, and I was setting up in a deer stand. I didn't even have a gun. I was just setting up in a deer stand watching in a tower. And it was a miserable day to be turkey hunting. It was cold and windy, and just one of those days when you felt like you should be deer hunting instead of turkey hunting. And Mr. David got cold, and he climbed up there with me, and we sat there for like 4 or 5 hours and just talked about everything from Jesus to the hunting industry to, everything. And it was priceless. I mean, I got a lifelong education in 4 or 5 hours about hunting, and the business of hunting, let's put it that way. And I was getting into TV at that time. And mainly what thing with TV was just another challenge, and just thinking how cool it would be. And I had a business plan. By then I had started buying and selling hunting farms, and I wanted to use Spook Nation as a means to be able to advertise and show the hunting farms on the show while we were turkey hunting or deer hunting or whatever. And so that was the reason why I started in the beginning. And I learned a lot of lessons early on and avoided a lot of issues by advice from Harold and David. So they were two of my main mentors back in the early days. And so, yeah, I mean, it's been awesome knowing those guys and getting to pick their brains about different things through the years, and also get warning signals and things to look out for.
Yeah.
Throughout. But yeah, those guys are awesome.
Okay, so that was kind of your start in deer hunting and how you got going with you talked about your TV stuff.
Right.
When did the obsession with 200-inch deer come into play, Spook? And if you don't mind me asking, how many have you killed now?
I think it's 22.
That's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah,
just 22.
I'm sitting here in the middle of them, and I just, am blessed. It's, like I said, I kept raising the bar. The year before I killed my first 200, I killed 3 over 180 on camera.
What year was it when you killed your first one?
07. So he's right here beside me. And so it was 07. So in 06, I killed 3 over 180 on camera. So I had a great season, a season that most people would give anything for the year before. And I had been killing some 160s to upper 170s for several years. I had a place in Western Kentucky that was awesome. It was close to Ballard County Refuge. And at that time, in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, I would have put that area up against anything in North America. It was phenomenal. It was an 8,000 acre goose and duck refuge in the Ohio River bottoms. And I mean, it was loaded. They ended up ruining it. They turned it into a public hunting area. And over a course of about a 20-year period, they just ruined it. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't give you 15 cents to go on it now or to be around it. So I ended up selling my farm later on. But I actually sold that farm that I had in Ballard and bought the farm in Kansas. And I actually bought 2 farms. And that's where – and we knew about this buck. We had seen him the year before. We had trail camera pictures of him. He was probably mid-80s the year before. And the next year he just blew up. I mean, he got drops and stickers and just overall size, mass and everything. He got bigger. He actually put on about at least 50 inches. He had a drop tine broke when I killed him. But just the excitement of killing him, it was a spot and stalk hunt. I'm sure you've seen it. I shot him at 6 yards off the ground, and just the pure joy. I thought my heart was going to bust. I was so excited seeing him fall on film right in front of us, which doesn't happen that often with a bow. And just the adrenaline, the rush, that first super giant was so addicting to me. And I have an addictive personality. It's like when I put my mind to something, I pretty much always go all in. whether it's basketball or my family or, the church or whatever. And that's the way I am about hunting, and especially deer hunting. It's just what I love to do. And some people have told me, oh, you'll get tired of it when you get older. Well, I just can't get enough. I mean, seeing a giant whitetail, I've been blessed to sheep hunt and hunt around the world, bear hunt and different things. And it's all super cool. Africa, New Zealand, Alaska, but there's nothing like seeing a big whitetail, period. I mean, just, especially when it's a deer that you've targeted and you've spent so much time and research and trail cameras and food plots and preparation and planning, and then here he comes, and as you see it all coming together, it's priceless.
When you leveled up, like, what was your biggest challenge do you think you faced when you got tired of shooting a certain class of deer and not necessarily leveled up to your 200 inch?
Yeah, and I don't want it to sound the wrong way. It's not that I got tired of it. It's not that at all. I mean, I had a 7.5-year-old 160-inch buck here in Tennessee at home this year. I chased him like he was a 230.
Yeah.
I mean, so I still enjoy killing old deer here at home. And not every year. Of course, I say this every year, and it seems like it wouldn't surprise. I know there's going to come years where I'm not going to find a 200. So what am I going to find? I'll find a 6-year-old 180 somewhere. I'll shoot that deer in a heartbeat if that's the best I can find. I just love to deer hunt, but I'm trying to maximize my time at going after the biggest thing I can find. If the biggest deer I can find next year is a 175 10 pointer and he's 5+ years old, we're going to hunt him,
Right.
And so it doesn't always have to be a 200. It's just whatever's the best thing I can find. But I have so many contacts now. I know so many people from Canada to Mexico that I'm going to find out, because I already know about each year. I know about deer right now. I swapped pictures with a guy today that showed me 3 bucks. I feel confident are going to be all 3 will be between 190 and 220 this next year. We already know, about those 3 bucks. And I know about 2 bucks in Canada that were both in the upper to low 200s this year. And we actually finalized the preparation and the travel plans on one of those deer today. So see, I'm like all the time I spend, before season ever closes, I'm planning for the next season on whatever deer it is that we think is going to be the next superstar. And so, and there's always things that happen to some of them. Some of them just disappear, which they probably are a victim of natural mortality. They may have gotten gored when they were fighting, and maybe it took them a while to die. They just disappear. Some of them get run over. Some of them get killed that you never hear about it. One of the bucks that we're really excited about, so we think that a buck that we knew about this year that got killed was 268. A kid killed it early in the season, supposedly. And the buck that was running with him was only 4.5. And it looks to me like it's his son. I think he's going to be over 200 easily this next season. And, but this deer has a tendency to disappear once all the crops are harvested. And so we don't know where he goes. And so so what I'm saying by saying all that is it doesn't always, 200 is just a measuring stick, a number. It's really almost more about age and what's available, And I thought I was on a deer last year and this year here at home. There was over 200, which would have been the biggest buck ever killed around my area. But I never found him this year. I knew pretty close to where he was living last year. And then this year, nobody saw him. Nobody got a picture of him. I had the table set for him on 3 different pieces of property. And I thought sure that he would show up, and nobody ever saw him. So I think something happened to him,
Yeah.
That's one that, I will probably never know, or I may find out. Who knows? Sometimes you'll find out a few years later. You'll hear about him hanging in somebody's barn.
Farmers can be hell on them, man.
Yeah,
They'll
yeah,
drive a tractor and shoot him and not even care and be like, oh, look at this, and then just put him in his barn.
So there's a million things that can happen to deer, and I hear the story all the time. They're like, man, I saw this deer, and he's 4.5, and I let him go, and then I never saw him again. I've had that happen a lot through the years, and sometimes the deer show back up, and sometimes they don't. But for me, it's really just about going after the best thing I can find, and if I can find a 200 that I think's killable, and then we get the right good pictures, and we feel like we can make it happen. I mean, I approach that mentality. I'm that guy that thinks every shot's going to go in, and I'm that guy that thinks that no deer's unkillable. I think they're all killable. You just got to figure it out where he's living, And a lot of times, we're just catching the deer on our camera because we're on the outskirts of where he's visiting occasionally, and not really where he's living. And so it's just a matter, can you figure it out? And is that a place you can get access to,
Is there anything you've ever, like a pattern you've noticed with these big, older, mature deer that you can say the biggest majority of them, you're going to find them in this area versus, I know they're all going to have different home ranges, but you've killed a lot of big, mature deer, like a lot. So
here's the thing. My experience has been that the home range gets smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that, especially at 6 and 7, I think they get easier to kill.
Yeah.
Because they are more worried about food than they are a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, they're never going to lose their survival skills, but they don't chase as hard. They don't go as far, and they hang closer to the food source. And I always, if I'm preparing a place, if it's something that I own or I have control of, I'm going to try to have my food right up against where I think's the bedding. And like that Illinois farm that I've had for 20 something years, it's a 975 acre farm. There's a bluff down one side of it that a deer can't get up and down. There's 700 acres up against that bluff. I never go in. It's a 700 acre sanctuary. I don't go in it shed hunting. I don't go in it for nothing unless I'm tracking a deer.
That's.
And I put all my food around the outside of that, where basically I can see every bit of it from one stand. And it has a power line that runs through the 700 acres also that I can see up and down. I mean, it's magical.
Yeah, I've got a good friend, and he kills a lot of big mature deer. And same thing. There's places he'll never go in, just refuses to. Once he finds it, he's like, I'm out of there. I don't go back in.
I don't go in for nothing. Literally for nothing. There's no reason for me to be back there. And do I want to go in there shed hunting sometimes? Yeah, I'd like to, but I'd rather hold him in the picture, the whole thing. And so if there's any chance whatsoever that I could run that deer off or make him feel uncomfortable, I want that deer to be as comfortable with walking out into my food source as possible. And I'm going to have everything out there for him I can possibly have, from soybeans to corn, standing corn, to, plush food plots, winter food plots, and, alfalfa, clover, brassicas, oats, wheat, everything. And so I know when I've got, 20 to 40 does in there, he's going to show up in the rut. I know he is, and it's just a matter of, am I going to have a buck that I would shoot that year in that spot? Mm-hmm. That's going to be the only question. And the other thing I know, that when all the farmers harvest their crops in these states that have a lot of crops, we know most of them take every stalk, every grain. And the later the season gets and the worse the weather gets and the colder it gets and the more snow you get, I just have deer migrating in all the time, and I never know what's going to show up. There may be something show up that in December that I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this present, and sometimes it might be a 3 or 4 year old 10 or 12 or 14 point that'll stay, which is what I'm banking on too. So he'll love what he's on so much. He'll either stay, or if he leaves, he'll come back sooner next year. And so I base everything. I go back to my old ways of the food plot when I was 14. Instead of me trying to hunt him on his terms all the time, and growing up in Tennessee, you know how hard it can be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to flip the script and trying to kill him on my terms, and I'm doing that with food. And I'm trying to put that food as close to a cover, some type of cover, so that they feel comfortable stepping out of that bedding area. They don't have as far to come, and they'll step out of that bedding area into the food source, 45 minutes before dark instead of 5 minutes before dark.
Right.
That's the goal. And making them feel so comfortable and so unbothered that, why is it that you can go down to, what's the place in Gatlinburg where the deer are Cades Cove. And they're just everywhere. You just drive out there and see them anytime. Well, it's because they're not bothered.
Yep.
And so that's the way I want them to feel. I'm trying to create my own park.
Shoot, you go to Nashville. I was in Nashville at the Law Enforcement Training Academy.
Yeah.
And man, I saw 200 deer, and they're literally laying down in front of the doors at the training academy.
Yeah.
It's just, I sent Josh videos of it, and I was going, look at all these freaking deer. It was just, I think I counted 200 on my way out to go eat one afternoon.
Probably one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my hunting career is living right here next to Nashville and not spending more time getting permission and hunting Davidson County more, because most of the biggest bucks that I know that's killed around here are killed in Davidson County. Mm-hmm. I've got a buddy who used to be a Metro officer, and he's killed 2 over 200 in Davidson County.
Yeah, I believe it.
He, on his patrol and all the time he spent, he would see them in places, and being an officer, he could get access to some places that sometimes other people couldn't, which was awesome. I'd do the same thing, so I'm not saying anything about
that's how all my big deer behind me, that's how I got the same thing. I was an officer and ran up on a good piece of property, and it was a gold mine for several years. I told Josh, I was driving around the other day, and I said, yeah, I'm looking for property. I was sending him little videos. It's like, look at these trails walking through. I said, I'm going to go guilt trip somebody.
So Davidson County is awesome. And there's a lot of parks in Nashville, Percy Warner, Radnor, golf courses. And then you got places like Brentwood and Bellevue and all these places where, there's hardly any hunting. And the people that I know that do, I got a landscaper buddy that gets permission to hunt some pretty cool places. Old ladies get tired of deer eating their flowers and all this stuff, and he gets to hunt in their backyard some. And he's done well.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here thinking, like, what can I take away from everything you're talking about? A guy that's killed so many big mature deer. And it's like, it doesn't matter where you hunt at. It could be public land in New York or in Pennsylvania. Like, you're talking about a bedding area close to a food source, and like that's where the big mature bucks are going to be. Yeah. And
I've done a lot of public hunting. I used to hunt on Cheatham a lot. I used to hunt on LBL a lot. I've hunted out west on public hunting, and it's the same thing. I would try to figure out where the thickest, roughest area was at, and find a clump of white oaks that was dropping as close to that area as possible, or just a lot of times I would put a summit stand on my back and grab my bow, and I'd just start walking until I could find some decent buck sign around some oak trees where the white oaks were dropping, and that's where I'd climb a tree, and I would always kill bucks. I had that mentality, I tried to figure out the places where I could get the furthest away from the road and any access, where most guys are usually going to stay within 500 yards of the road. I'm going to be 1,500 yards from the road, and I've done very well like that at Cheatham and at LBL through the years. And yeah, I just try to find a food source as close as possible to where I think a big buck would like to bed. And, we all know they're loners. They like to be away from everything after they've busted up in October. And, and October's tough in Tennessee. That October's it's usually warm. It can be really tough, but
usually they've already split. They're off their summer pattern, and
they're
already pretty much nocturnal for that month. They're not moving a whole lot late in the day.
But see there again, if you've got a good food source, you got a clover field, corn field, soybean field, you got a good food source, and you can watch the moon and the weather and hunt it when we do have an occasional front, good front. And another thing I really love is those rainy, drizzly afternoons. I used to just long for those just dreary, rainy, low cloud afternoons. I loved it, and so big bucks like to move in that condition also. And so I had good luck on clover fields. And then I got started planting alfalfa in later years. And of course, that actually just takes things to another level. Alfalfa is phenomenal if you have the ability to take care of it. It's a lot of trouble, but it's awesome.
Yeah. What you got? I think you got a little better soil up there than we do. We got good soil.
Alfalfa. We're right on the borderline, and anything south of us is difficult. Matter of fact, my uncle was a big cattle guy, and I asked him one time. I said, if I plant, we had about 5-acre field behind the sawmill. I said, I'll do all the work, I'll do everything, but I said I want to plant alfalfa. I said, will you pay for the seed and the fertilizer and the lime if I do the work and you can have the hay? He's like, yeah, I'll do it. But he's like, I ain't never had no luck growing out alfalfa. Well, I had done it before, so I knew I could do it. And I timed it perfect. I planted it right in mid-August, right before we had a 2-inch rain. And for about 5 or 6 years, I had the prettiest alfalfa, and he loved it. He just thought it was awesome. And man, he got the hay off of it, which helped me because alfalfa is made to cut, it helps it when you cut it. And so, but when I had my place in Western Kentucky, I had about 30 acres on that farm of alfalfa. And I had a guy who was really into it. He asked me, he said, how much rent do you want for it? And I said, I don't want you to pay me any rent. I said, anything that you would pay me, I want you to put it back in the soil. I said, I want the best crop of alfalfa on my farm that you think you can possibly grow 365 days a year. I said, I want about 8 or 10 inches going into hunting season. That's all I asked for. The second year, he really got into it because we had a bunch of locals that said we couldn't grow a quality crop of alfalfa. And this was in Kentucky. And the second year, he set an international record for the highest protein content ever recorded in a bale of alfalfa.
Oh, wow. That's wild.
And so, it was awesome. And what he would do after every cutting, he would go in there and put a little shot of fertilizer on it. And then when it got up about 3 inches tall, he would spray it with dical phosphorus, a liquid, and it would just turn the boldest, most beautiful green. And oh my gosh, the deer just loved it. And then I had about 40, 50 acres of standing corn around the sides of it. And 5, 6, 7 days before season would open, I'd go bush hog about 3 or 4 acres of corn.
Yeah.
And then somebody wants to say, oh, you're lucky you killed a big one. If you're in the right zip code and you got that kind of food, I think that luck is where preparation meets perseverance. It's all in the preparation. I didn't pull the trigger until hunting season, but I had the table set way before that and all the planning done. The hunting part sometimes can be the easiest part, you know, if you've got everything ready. But, you know, I spend the whole year getting ready for the next year. Yeah. And I think that's what's hard for people to comprehend and understand when they think that it's not possible to do this. When you're constantly researching and finding out information where there's pockets of superior genetics, then you find a place in that area that you can either you lease it or you purchase it, or you sometimes you just get permission. I mean, sometimes I can talk to a guy and shoot, he's fine. He loves it. I did a podcast today on a buck I killed several years ago. It was over 200. And I found out about the deer, just went up and talked to the farmer. He's like, yeah, come on and hunt. You know, he was fine with it. And so, you know, but, and that deer was on a bean field. He was coming in a big bottom of beans. But yeah, I really put a lot of emphasis on food sources for sure. I try to put the best outfeed all my neighbors, and
man,
that's
you sound just like my friend John. I mean, like
yeah, John.
There's something to what he tells me, because I'm hearing you say it. And he is fanatical about little to no pressure at all. Like, he will not go until it is exactly right. I mean, he'll check his cameras, and he's got a certain weird way he checks them. Like if he goes in a truck, he's not turning his truck off. He's not slamming doors. He's not talking. He's putting his cameras up and he's leaving. If he's on a four-wheeler, he leaves the four-wheeler running. I mean, like weird stuff like that. And then
I drive my family crazy on my farm, not slamming doors. One of my biggest pet peeves of my life is not slamming the door on the farm. You know, I mean, I'm just over the top. Everything. I mean, when I go to put a new stand or ground blind in, a lot of times I'll put it on the bush hog and drive the tractor in, leave the tractor running while I put it in. You know, I mean, just different things like that just makes a difference. And I'm an aggressive hunter now. I mean, I'm aggressive. If I see something going on and I'm not in the right spot, I'll make that move right then. I mean, I'll go in the middle of the day, the next day, and I'll drive the tractor and bush hog up there, and shouldn't even tell this. I might not even disengage the bush hog. I want everything to sound the same. And I'll put the ground blind up and brush it. It might take me 2 hours to where you cannot tell it's there, and hunt it that evening.
Yeah.
You know? And because I saw him walk by that morning. And so, you know, I've been, you know, I think that sometimes people are hesitant to move because they don't think they can pull it off. But if you approach it the right way and try to figure out a way that's something that deer's used to, that you can do. And most of the time in farm country, it's a tractor, you know, and sometimes, you know, I got a bad boy buggy, and I do use it sometimes. And I do like it to access certain places to make if I can, to make the walk shorter, if I think I can do it without bothering the deer, you know, but, or, you know, and sometimes we use a diesel truck, but the tractor's the best, you know, tractor's
he uses the tractor a lot when he's putting people in the stands, if he's taking somebody to get them a buck, or when we turkey hunt, a lot of the times he's taking somebody that's not, you know, a big turkey hunter, put them in a blind where he knows turkeys are coming out. He rides that tractor right in there, and he'll get them right up to the blind, because the everything's used to those tractors. It really does make a difference. But
exactly, I can get on my tractor and ride around here on my place and in the driveway and everything. The turkeys and deer will stand there and watch me. I get on that Polaris, they're gone.
They're gone. Yeah, for sure.
It's crazy, but tractor is one of the best hunting tools on the planet.
Yeah.
Spook, you mentioned being in the right zip code. Where's the right zip code for big mature deer? Is there like, or not big mature deer? There's mature deer everywhere, but the deer that grow the 200.
The genetics. So it can vary. I mean, just like Kansas, as good as Kansas is as a whole, there's still certain areas that just have a history of producing better deer. And like the place where I had my farm, there was a 3 mile circle that in a 10-year period, there had been 10 bucks killed from 193 typical to 253 non-typical.
Wow.
And that's where I killed my 230 buck. Now, granted, there was a lot less hunting going on back then than there is now in that area. Admittedly, after I killed that buck there, it kind of messed that area up because so many people knew about it. And now, most of the time, if a deer gets 4.5, if he's over 170, he gets killed. And as hard as it is, most of the time, the buck that's going to be a 200 the next year is a 170 to 180, mid to upper 180, if not 190 the year before. And it's just a matter, do you have the willpower to take the chance on letting that buck live to, and my philosophy is if I see 10 4 and 5 year olds a year that aren't quite and 4-year-olds rarely ever am I ever going to shoot a 4-year-old unless there's some circumstances that I'm not going to have. I got a 4-year-old right here beside me in Velvet that's over 200 that I shot one year, but in Kentucky, but I knew I wasn't going to get to be on the farm the next year. So I would have loved to see what he would have done in another year. I think he would have been, 230 the next year, but I couldn't not shoot the deer. But if I let 10 go by in a season and 5 of them survive, that's 5 chances of really good bucks that I wouldn't have had if I had shot them all,
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of the way I look at it. I mean, I know there's nothing. I mean, I had a buck here at home last year that was in the 150s. He was 4.5. He had 12 points. I was like, oh my gosh, that deer is going to be, for a Tennessee deer, he would have been 5.5. I think he'd have been mid upper 170s next year. The neighbor killed him in December right at Christmas. And what are you going to do? It's just, that's the way sometimes. And I passed a couple more that did make it. So, I'm hoping that they'll be in that range this next year. But that one got killed. Once I got past the, whatever it is, I guess you could call it trauma of letting deer go by and something else happening to them, and just accepting the fact that that's going to happen sometimes, and that somebody else is going to kill them or whatever. Sometimes, and just say, hey, this is the way I'm going to do it. I'm sticking to it. If he doesn't get any bigger, okay, I'll shoot him next year and he'll be the same size. Or if he gets killed by somebody else, it's just not my luck. But every deer I let by, I know is not going to get killed. So I just figure, whatever. If only 2 of them make it, that's still 2 deer that are more mature and bigger next year that I wouldn't have had if I'd have shot them the previous year. So that's just the way I look at it. Once I got content, I won't say content, but once I got to where I didn't put so much pressure on myself to fill a tag when I went on hunts and went on, other states, and I didn't feel like I had to kill one or I'd wasted my time. When I got past that, I became so much more successful and started having more fun hunting, and I got more successful on really big deer. And I understand everybody can't do that. I understand that everybody's doesn't have the same circumstances or the same means or the same access or the same time. Jobs and family and life gets in the way of the perfect scenario. I remember I used to stand up there at the sawmill and just like, oh Lord, just please give me November someday. Someday I would just like to be able to hunt the whole month of, November. So just give me November. I just love to have the whole month of November, And now, I've been blessed the last, 20 plus years. I pretty much go whenever the moon's right, the weather's right, and I can leave. If a buck in Kansas shows up on camera tonight and I hadn't seen him in a month, and boom, there he is, I get in the truck, throw all my stuff in, and I'm gone, And I know everybody can't do that. but it does make a big difference. If you book a hunt with somebody and you got 5 to 7 days, you can figure with the weather, you're going to end up with 2 or 3 good, maybe half your hunt's going to be a good weather. The rest of it's not going to be that good. Now in November, it's not as big a deal. But even if it gets to be 80 in November in Kansas, they're not going to move as much in the daytime, as they would if it was 30.
Yeah.
So but when you have the ability to go back and forth according to the weather and the moon and the trail camera pictures, then you improve your chances so much. I mean, it's like the first Kansas buck that I killed. I was dedicating my whole season to that one deer. I was going to go back and forth for 3 months till I either killed him or season run out, and I wasn't shooting anything else. So fortunately, I killed him in the middle of November and got to chase a couple other good deer that year. Not 200s. The other one, I think I killed another buck that year that was in the 180s in Kentucky. But I wouldn't have ever left this deer if it hadn't until I killed him.
Do you kind of hyper focus on a certain deer? Like, do you get one in your head, like what you're talking about every year, and that's kind of like what you hyper focus on instead of
sometimes
casually and then maybe a couple more? Or how do you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's always it's always awesome if you are fortunate enough to find 3 or 4 or 5 in across North America, and then you try to plan your season according to what you know about the deer. And around when you think the rut's going to be the most intense in that particular state or area, and where do you think you'll have the best opportunity to the best weather, what the season dates are. And as much as I love to bow hunt, and I've killed, probably 2/3 of my 200s have been with the bow, or maybe even more. But I'm at the point in my life and my hunting career where I really don't care anymore what I kill him with. I just want to, if it's a big, mature, giant, 200+ inch deer, I just want to get him killed. Yes, I'm going to try to kill him with a bow, but if it don't work out, I'll be in Illinois there opening day of shotgun muzzleloader with my muzzleloader. And, and if he comes out, I mean, I killed a giant last year in Illinois with the muzzleloader, and when my wife was with me filming with the phone, and when I walked up on him, I started crying. I was so happy. He was just like a freaking giant, and I was just so excited and so emotional. And I don't think I could have been any more excited if I shot him with a bow. Yeah, I like that, and I like hunting with a bow, and I still chase stuff with a bow, even whether it's in Africa or bear hunting or whatever. But I think that sometimes we can get so caught up into thinking that everything's got to be with a bow that sometimes it could take some of the enjoyment out of just hunting.
No problem.
Yeah. And once I got past that, and some of that had to do with doing TV. Admittingly, I just felt like, a lot of times I just felt like I needed to do it with a bow because I felt like it made better TV. But I like hunting with every weapon. I like shooting long range. I got a 300 Jarrett. I killed an ibex with it at 1,100 yards one time, and it was awesome. But so I just like, that's funny. I got a problem, man. I got it bad. I just like killing stuff. So it's.
I'd hate to get him and John together, man.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Sounds like the OCD of the ADHD and the OCD factor between those two.
It doesn't matter whether I'm squirrel hunting or duck hunting or what. I I used to chase groundhogs like they were booners. You know, I mean, I just like, it doesn't matter what it is. Me and my dad had a commercial duck and goose hunting operation in Western Kentucky for 15 years. And I killed more ducks and geese in a 15-year period than I thought I'd kill in 3 lifetimes.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. Matter of fact, I don't know if you can see that my lanyard's hanging right there. It's probably got 30 or 40 bands on it. And, but I still got a night and hail double cluck goose call that I bought in 1980 something on the lanyard. And I got one of the first ever duck commander duck calls on that lanyard that I bought in the 80s.
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
I'm old.
Yeah, my friend John, he's your age. He'll be 60 this year.
Gotcha.
So, you know, and he's a straight killer, whether it's turkeys or, I mean, we duck hunted one year and he got zoned in like on these ducks and literally was stalking these ducks.
Yeah.
This shotgun, like, shh.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I had a camera right now because this would make for some great TV.
Yeah.
You know, to kill these ducks.
I used to really be mad at turkeys. I got really mad at turkeys for several years, and I didn't care if I belly crawled on them. If they stopped coming to the call, I'd just watch them, and I'd get down in the grass, and I'd just belly crawl up and shoot them. You know.
Yeah.
Now I don't. You know, if they won't gobble and come to a call, I was like, well, I'll get him tomorrow. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But for 20 years, I fueled my irritation with them not cooperating. So I do whatever, crawl up on them and everything else to get them killed. And I know that wasn't necessarily the fair way to do it, but
anything's fair with a turkey as long as you don't shoot it. Anything's fair as long as you don't
think it depends who you ask.
I've killed several with the bow and I enjoyed it, but I don't know. It's just nothing like
blowing their head off.
I know. It just ain't the same, man. I don't know. It's sad. We're sick, but it just ain't the same.
Something wrong. I love it. Spook, I live pretty close to Dustin Huff in Indiana. He killed the Huff buck.
Dustin, yeah.
Yep. Have you
eat with us one night at ATA after he killed his buck, and he had it there at the show, and then me and the Eskers and a bunch of us went out to eat, and Dustin went with us. Yeah.
Have you ever felt like you were on a deer that would have been at that caliber?
Yeah, so I got a couple of typicals right in that range. I've never entered anything in the books because I don't want people to think that that's why I hunt. And it's not that I'm against it. I just, I've got sheep that'll go in the books. I've got a bunch of SCI records from Africa, bears, mule deer, and a lot of whitetails. I just don't do. Now, don't get me wrong. I've always thought that I was destined someday to kill the world record. Typical. I still believe it. I still believe someday I'm going to kill the world record. And I don't know whether that's, I don't know where that comes from other than the fact I've known about a few. And I know, it's like I said on the Hunter podcast recently, drove people crazy. I know a guy's got one hanging in his house right now that's easily the world record. He won't go public with it because he just loves to hunt. He don't want the PR. He don't need the money. He don't want people invading his privacy and his area where he hunts. And he just, it's for himself. He wouldn't even take it and have it mounted. He bought a mount and took the horns off and put his horns on it, and I had a chance to hunt that deer, but it was just really bad timing. And granted, he didn't tell me that he thought it was the new world record because he said that he wasn't sure himself. But when I say I had a chance, I mean, he was wanting to make some kind of arrangement on it, and it was just bad timing for me. It was after the crash in 2008, and the economy was terrible. I had 2 kids in private school playing ball, travel ball, basketball, baseball, running a business, trying to get the show going. It was just bad timing, financially, it wasn't a good time for me to spend that kind of money on deer. Now, granted, had I known it was a world record, I'd have went to the bank and borrowed the money.
You make some money if you kill the world record.
I know, right? But he didn't tell me that, and I didn't approach it like that. I found out about another one in Canada one time, and was making plans to go after that deer, and then it mysteriously disappeared at the end of the season that I found out about him. And the guy obviously you have to have somebody that's giving you the information that you trust, knows what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always difficult because so many things have to go into world record, especially symmetry. And so, but I've since found out about a couple in Canada that could be world records. One of them I was planning on going after 2 years ago, and the farmer, I was getting ready to book my plane flights, and the farmer had a cow got shot, and he just stopped the hunting. Said, I'm not allowing anybody on the farm. And I was devastated because this guy that told me about it, he's like, I know it's a world record. He said, I've seen it 3 times. I know. He said, it's easy to world record. He said, it's going to net over 220. And it was 6x6. And so, and I trust him in what his knowledge is, And so, so I've known about a few. It just didn't work out. But I just believe that with today, with the technology that we have and the fact that people are more conscious of growing big deer and finding big deer, and I just think that I just believe it's going to happen someday.
I'll be honest with you. I think as hard a worker as Lee Ellis is, I think that boy's got a good chance of killing something that's just true. I mean,
he could. Lee does a lot. So Lee focuses a lot on the city bucks.
Y'all know each other, right? You and Lee?
Yeah. I've known Lee since he was a teenager. He used to come up to me at shows and just pick my brain, just ask questions, which I loved it, because I saw his passion and saw how much he loved it. And I told my wife, I was like, that kid's gonna kill some big bucks, in the future, because he's doing the things that and asking the questions that I used to do and ask when I was young. Yeah. And so I knew he was gonna. He does a lot like the Eskers, my 2 buddies from Ohio, the Esker twins that have killed 9 200s between the 2 of them, and they're around Pickerington and Columbus. And so, there is that potential. The hardest part of world record typical is just being in a place where there is a typical genetic.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part, because so many times when that buck gets to be, especially 6.5, he just doesn't stay typical. He's going to get kicker or an inline or a common base point or something that's going to keep. I mean, I killed a deer 4 years ago. I thought would be the new world record, but he's a 7x9, and so he deducts out, and he has a common base point on one side too. But if you saw him at first glance, the year before, when I saw him, I was like, that's the new world record. He's going to be the new world record next year. But he wasn't even, so he deducted out. And I can't wait to get him. I don't have him. I'm having replicas made, and the guy that I had making them had some health issues and some family issues, so it's taken a while to get the replicas. He's got them ready now, so hopefully I'll have him mounted here before too much longer. But he's spectacular.
Wow,
I mean,
that's crazy.
He's insanely awesome.
Have you ever
grosses around 240? So as a typical 7x9.
Wow. Have you ever hunted? Have you ever hunted over in Arkansas any?
Not deer hunting, and I know Arkansas has some big bucks in those duck hunting areas,
Yeah.
on the Mississippi. And I've talked to guys and I've seen pictures of big ones and I've heard stories, and but I've never hunted it. I've hog hunted some. I got a guy hog hunting with
Oh,
me.
it's ate up with hogs right over there.
And I've never even duck hunted in Arkansas. Our hunting was so good in Western Kentucky and Southern Illinois that I just, I had kind of, that's where we were doing most of our duck hunting and goose hunting. So I just didn't. I've got tons of buddies. I passed up 2 or 3 invitations this past year to go just because I was trying to get my house finished and get moved in. And so I didn't go. But I'll probably go with these guys next year.
I would. I tell you, you'd be surprised at some of the deer. I know my friend that I was telling you about, that's just a lot like you, reminds me, man. He's seen some over two. This one farmer's got probably 5 or 6 over 200. He just shot off a tractor, over the years, overnight. This right across the river. I mean, just like right there. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah.
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it. I mean, I've seen some good ones, and I've not yet been able to find, and granted, I hadn't put a lot of effort into Arkansas. I've gotten so enamored with Western Kentucky, Illinois, Ohio, Kansas, Oklahoma that I haven't. It took me. I spent 20 years trying to find a good place in Texas that wasn't high fence, that had deer. I finally found a guy in South Texas that's got a lot of big rancher buddies that don't hunt much and they're not serious about it. And they got these huge cattle ranches and they'll feed and they've got senderos and towers, but they just like their kids hunt some. They're not serious about it. And so I've gotten access to some pretty good stuff in Texas. And I enjoy Texas because it's a different kind of hunting. It's kind of a lazier hunt.
Yeah.
But it's fun,
Yeah.
And it's I've gotten to the age now, I've hunted so hard all my life that I'm happy with the easy one every now.
Yeah.
I don't want to call any of them easy, but I would say easier. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So I'm going to admit right now that I'm if I get one that I don't, only have to sit there 4 or 5 days in a tower on, then I'm okay with it.
You talked about earlier about getting good information from reliable people. Patrick, I don't know if you ever heard Dan tell the story. He had some guy tell him that there was this big 200-inch deer in this marsh. He lives in Wisconsin, and he said I went and sat there, and he said, here come a 140, and I was like, all right, he said, I passed it, and he said, I passed it again a couple days later, and I don't know if he took a video of it or something, and he showed the guy. He's like, yeah, the big one didn't come out, and he showed the video. He was like, that's it, that's the big one, that's the 200-inch. Yeah, and he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And and I get it. Most people have never seen a deer over 150. And so, when they see a really nice deer, and a lot of times maybe they don't get the best look at it in the world, or they've just never really seen a real big one. And I get it, and one thing I always want to mention, I don't think that I'm better than anybody else, and everybody, it's like I said, everybody has different limitations and lives that they have to live. And so I just want everybody to enjoy hunting, be happy with what you got. You don't have to kill something as big as the next person. I'm really big on celebrating each other's success and being happy for that person. I just think the worst thing in the world for us is in the hunting world is just jealousy and rumors and accusations and judgments and people down on somebody because they rifle hunt and don't bow hunt, or they shoot a crossbow rather than a bow, or they I just really think it's important that we all just be happy for everybody who gets to hunt, who wants to hunt, who loves to hunt, regardless of how they like to hunt.
Yeah.
And if they're in a state where they can feed corn, awesome. If if you're in a state where you can't, then try to do the best you can to plant something for the deer.
Go to one where you can.
Yeah, or that. And I've done that, and that's and granted, I love that. I have my own strategies when it comes to manipulating deer with feed. Like Kansas, I used to go to the grain bin in Kansas with a 3,000 pound grain wagon and fill it to the top and pull out in the CRP and just make me an acre, open the chute halfway and drive around and make me an acre food plot.
Yeah, people don't understand. It doesn't baiting or feeding or baiting, or it doesn't equal killing deer. I mean, they get, it's honestly.
It doesn't. There's a lot of strategy that goes into successfully killing a mature buck when you're feeding. And there's no difference in having a cornfield or a bean field or whatever that you can hunt over versus pouring out corn.
No,
and everybody thinks that you pour out a corn pile and it's just you're automatically going to kill a big one, and that is not the case.
I think it makes it harder. In Kentucky, I hunted on a place that it got a good bit of hunting pressure, but the guy that I hunted with, he fed, and I'm telling you, those does came in, and I guarantee I don't think I could have drawn back on a doe if I tried, because they were just constantly looking in the trees around it because they were so used to runners being there.
Yeah, so there's a lot of strategy that goes into learning how to successfully hunt over feed. And I know big bucks as a general rule don't like going into a corn pile where there's other deer, does and fawns and little bucks. They just don't like it. Now, will they do it sometimes? Of course, sometimes they will. But most of the time, they're going to do it in the dark. Will a buck come around and stand downwind of it 30 or 40 yards and watch the does when he's scent checking in the rut? Yes, but most of the time, he won't go up there and eat in it. Late season, you've got a better chance, especially in states where it gets cold and you have bad weather. Maybe you get a big snow in Indiana and Ohio and some places like that, which you can't. I don't even know about. I've never hunted Indiana. You can't feed in Indiana, can you?
No, it's not.
Oh, it's in Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah, you can in Ohio.
Yeah, and so there is a better chance, when you have some cold weather, but there's a lot of thought that has to go into it, and strategy, and there again, I enjoy the heck out of it. It's just another way to get to hunt and try to figure things out. And I do the same thing. And if I'm in Kansas, I'm going to feed thousands of pounds of corn in a big area to try to draw as many does as I can in there, and then pre-rut and rut. I know there's going to be a big one come in there.
Some states you have to feed, or else you're just not going to be. It's going to make your hunting really hard. Arkansas is that way. You can feed Arkansas. Tennessee, they're trying to pass a feed permit here.
Yeah, so I know the representative that got all that started, and he worked really hard for quite a while. Now he retired this past year, which I was disappointed. It's come back up before. It's back up now for the vote. I'm not sure exactly when the vote is, which it's the whole thing's really dumb to me. Yeah. You can feed 250 yards as long as you're 250 yards from it. Every subdivision, what makes it unhealthy all of a sudden for the deer just because you're sitting there with a bow or a gun. It's the same corn pile whether you're hunting it or whether you're not hunting it. And all these little old ladies and people on these subdivisions and everybody. I mean, my buddy runs the co-ops here in Middle Tennessee, and he says we sell way more corn to residents for deer and turkeys than we do to farmers.
Oh yeah, I bet.
And so they just love seeing them and having them in their backyard and whatever, and so there's thousands of people feeding deer, and we have states. I mean, why is it okay you can kill the world record over a corn pile in Kansas or Ohio or Arkansas, but you get burned at the stake for shooting a spike or a doe in Tennessee?
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
It's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
If you don't want to hunt with corn and you don't think it's fair, then don't do it. If you want to do it, if you're limited on time, I think it's important too. I think with our kids too, we got to be really careful because there's so many things for them to do now, so many things for them to get involved in. And hunting, we have to do something to keep them invested. And if they go out there and sit 2 or 3 days and they don't see a deer, it's hard. It's going to be hard to keep them going back,
Mm-hmm.
And at least if you're feeding corn, at least they're going to have, they're going to see some deer.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to get to kill a doe or a little buck or whatever to kind of get started in their hunting career. And I know it's very controversial and a lot of people hate it and they don't think we should be able to do it. And they'll, probably see this and give me 9 tons of heck about it. But I just think it comes down to the point of we should all be happy for whatever anybody likes to do and what's available. I'll never forget one of the first times I ever heard Michael Waddell speak was at one of the shows in Tennessee 25 years ago. And I've known Michael for a long time. Had a good talk with him. He's going to be on my podcast here before long, but he, one of the first times I ever heard him, he's like, hey, how many of y'all think that it's not okay to hunt over corn? So we're in Tennessee, and this is 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the people raised their hand. He said, okay. He said, well, I was going to offer to give away a free hunt with me in Texas, but he said, we're going to be hunting over corn. So the people who raise their hands are automatically disqualified.
Yeah.
And everybody did just what you guys just did. They started laughing. He's like, yeah, now it's okay, right? So that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
If you live in a place where it's not okay, you tend to lean more towards saying you don't think it's right. But people in Ohio don't have any problem with it. And the people in Kansas, nobody in Kansas has a problem with it. Nobody in Texas has a problem with it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of,
Well, and it's like I heard Waddell say too. I was actually going to bring him up a minute ago. He's like, it's a poor man's food plot because you can go to the feed store, get you 200 pounds of corn.
You don't
have pour it out. You don't have money or time to do the food plot, which costs a lot of money.
Exactly.
And it's you're accomplishing the same thing. You're trying to bring deer to a certain area. One grows out of the ground because you planted it. The other grew out of somebody else's ground and you just threw it out. It's kind of
I know enough biologists, and I'm very good friends with Grant, and I just don't see any correlation in any kind of disease, which has been some of the argument over the years. Yeah. And there again, it just it's not if you're going to get disease, you're going to get disease. And there's just not any, it's just Mother Nature and there's nothing we can do about it. And, I don't care what it is, EHD, blue tongue, CWD, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't go in there and shoot it out. You don't know where it is. You don't know what's got it. You don't know, you just have to let it run its course and adjust accordingly. It's just part of Mother Nature. And so and I don't see, most of the time a deer comes up and eats in the corn, stands there for 2 or 3 minutes, and then they move on.
Yeah.
And maybe in the wintertime, maybe when disease is not even an issue anyways, in the winter, they may stand there longer, and there may be more of them. But I have never seen in the summer or September or October 40 deer come up and eat out of the corn at the same time.
There's too much for them out there to eat.
Yeah,
I mean,
deer are naturally browsers.
Right.
I've sat in Kentucky on my farm, and I had it was almost like an experimental place you would see at Mississippi State or something. I had 150 acres of standing corn, bush hog corn, soybeans, alfalfa, imperial whitetail, brassicas, buckwheat, anything biologic, anything that you could name, I had it out there. And I sat and witnessed. I wanted to see what deer liked the most at different times of the year, different weathers, different times of the season, different temperatures. And I would sit there and watch deer over in the refuge eating the ends off of sage grass and weeds.
dead leaves. I've seen them eat dead leaves
For an hour before and I just sat there going, are you kidding me? I've got 30 grand worth of crops out here standing in the beautiful, picturesque stuff you've ever seen that looks like something was grown at a college institute, and they're standing over there eating junk, And now, eventually, they all came out there and they all ate on the different things, and most of the time would spend the night. But they sit over there and eat. I watch them eat for an hour before they come out, into the good stuff. You would think that those deer would just run out there and they wouldn't even hesitate, wouldn't even stop for anything that was over there on the, in the weeds and all the fields that didn't have anything in them. So anyways, but I still believe in providing the best food sources. And another thing that's really nice that when people can do it is control burns are provide some of the best food sources for the money that you can have. Especially if it's on your own property. I mean, if you can do controlled burns, man, they are awesome.
Yeah, John's doing them right now. He's burning his whole farm right now. He does it. He tries to do it every year, every 2 years. He tries to do it when things get thick.
Yeah. I mean, Grant recommends every 3 years, but regardless, it's still really good, because those young plants and even, different hardwood plants and different things, when that green comes out at the end of that limb or out of the ground fresh and green, that protein is just, it's awesome.
Have you seen the stuff where they took I saw it on a video where they took and cut a maple tree at the stump and then let it grow up and all the new growth out of it? They said the protein concentration in that is just ridiculous.
Exactly. So here's the concept. Here's the concept when you can do it. If you got a big enough place, you try to do 3 or 4 sections of clear cuts. And you want to burn off a section every year. And so, the concept is you burn section 1, year 1. You burn section 2, year 2. You burn section 3, year 3. And if you've got a 4th one, you can do it, or you can combine it with one of the others. Then you go back to section 1 on the 4th year and burn it. So what has happened is you didn't kill your plant under the ground. The root's still there. So the first year you may have a root that's as big as a pencil pushing up into your plant. So you burn it, and then the next 2 or 3 years, that root gets up more like this or bigger. And it's pushing into the same size plant because through the burning, you're not allowing that wooded plant to get very big because you're burning it off. But the root keeps getting bigger, and the roots were the nutrients. So you're taking turns burning extra, and you're letting that root grow more and more. So that's the concept where you've got a big root pushing into a small plant, and rather than being divided out among a pretty big tree, it's just that nutrition's coming into just a bush. And it's down low enough and it stays low enough where they can eat the prime protein coming out of that bush but the roots keep getting bigger and producing more nutrients into the plant. And that's the concept between rotating the burning to get that bigger root, just like you said. And so that's the same idea that you're going for in that.
It's awesome for turkeys too, man. Those turkeys love burns.
The nesting in the turkey population, one of the biggest problems we have with turkeys are predators and getting into the eggs before they even hatch. And so when you've got places like that where, and then when those burns, those hens love coming in there and getting those bugs and things like that. And then most of the time, by the time they hatch in June, late May or in June, usually those places that you burn aren't grown up enough. They still can take those pokes in there and feed in those places and still be pretty secure. So yeah, those things, turkeys love burns.
Yeah, it's just good for everything. Very, very advisable if you got a little place to do it.
Spook, I named this podcast "The Curse of Chasing 200 Inches." Is there anything like over the years that you ever wish you'd crawl off in a hole or never started this whole deal, or like you got any, not really regrets, but just like done anything different?
Well, I think there's always things in life you look back you would have done a little bit different. I mean, the curse of being successful is the curse of being successful. Doesn't matter what it's in. It doesn't matter whether you're a successful business person, a successful athlete, you know, whether your truck's too nice or your house is too big, or, you know, whatever it is, people have a tendency to feel less than they should because maybe that they haven't accomplished that. And so it brings out a bad side in some people, you know, if you could make yourself understand that if you're happy for people who are successful, it's so much easier on you mentally.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it's some reason it seems so bad in the hunting industry where guys get so jacked up over a guy killing a big buck, you know, and if you kill too many, then you're just automatically doing something wrong, you know. And so, but what I've learned is, and I've kind of hardened myself to take the hatred and try to work with it, you know, and just understand it's going to happen. And when somebody hates on me on social media, I just try to come back at them and say, you know, I try to be nice and kill them with kindness rather than, you know, because they want you to retaliate. And I'm not going to give them that satisfaction. And I'm going to try to, you know, tell them the truth and tell them to, you know, I try to give them information, I guess, somewhat make them feel bad for the way they've chose to start the conversation or the, you know, whatever it is. And I mean, you know, I think the thing that's bothered me the most is just the, you know, I've been a target of obviously some issues with game and fish, and which was all started out of personal things, didn't have anything to do with hunting itself. And, but because of the things I've been fortunate enough to be a part of and the TV show and the success, you know, came with expectations that I should need to do something for somebody because of that. Whereas, you know, I'm mainly in my life, I just worry about my family and my friends, and I try to help out people around me when I can. But, you know, I try not to get caught up in, and probably the biggest regret I've got in my hunting and TV career is not maybe getting a little bit more involved and having, as far as, you know, having a TWRA moment of the month or something, or advice, and having a game official or something coming on the show for a 2-minute segment on something we could do to avoid an issue, or something like that. I'm the type, if they would have come ask me, I'd have done it in a second, would have been glad to have done it. I just was something I never really thought about, because I don't think my mind doesn't work on how can I cheat somebody out of something. Or I was raised in the church. I've lived in this fantasy world in my life where if you treat everybody good and nice and respectful, that'll always be returned to you. Well, as we know, that's not always the case.
Yeah.
And so, but I still believe that the good guy always ends up winning in the end. And I just try to, I just try to not let things bother me. Granted, in the beginning, it's easy to let negativity get to you. But my dad told me a long time ago, I got real upset because my dad lost an election that he had previously won by really large amounts, just because a guy went out and started rumors that weren't true. And I got really upset about it. And being a typical 18 or 20-year-old, I mean, I was ready to bust somebody's nose. And but Dad told me, he said, son, you got to understand that anytime you stand up for something and you believe in something and you stand your ground and you're successful and you go over and above what the average person thinks is over and above, there's going to be people that's going to not like that. And you just got to understand right now, he said, because you're that person. My dad was a lot like me. My dad, when he did something, he went all in, bass fishing, quail hunting, and his work. My dad was a workaholic. He was straight old school, worked all the time. And so I was the same way when it came to sports and hunting and so on. So that just doesn't sit well with some people. You guys are successful on your podcast, and I'm sure there's some people that don't like it, but you still are nice to them and you go on in day-to-day life. And I just think that you treat people the way you want to be treated. You're not always going to be treated the way you treat others, but that's the way I try to live. And if you choose to burden yourself with, hating on me, then that's your problem. I ain't got time. My motto is go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that.
The other one that I'm somewhat hesitant sometimes to say, but I can't help it. If hating's your occupation, I got a full-time job for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. Because I mean, even my, this platform here, it's not big by any means, but there's enough people that watch it that I have people that don't like me about certain things. I mean,
yeah.
Me and Patrick do a Bible study on here, and boy, people don't like that. We lose subscribers every time we do one.
That's really sad. Yeah, it's really sad, but you can't let that. That's exactly right. You can't let that deter you.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually didn't do this on purpose. I wore this shirt today. My grandson got his first haircut today. And so I went and got mine cut to hopefully relax him a little bit, because he's almost 4 and he was not accepting it too well. And I saw it. I put this shirt on. I just kept it on for the podcast. But I grew up in the church. My mom was, hardcore. Hard.
Yeah.
So I, grew up with that lifestyle. But I just think it's important to. I think that's another really important part of being happy. I just think that if you don't have a relationship with Jesus in some shape, form, or fashion, it's going to be hard for you to find any real, true happiness in life.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to be nice to people when you know how Jesus wants us to be.
Exactly.
And it's a lot easier to let go of your hate when you find Christ. Because
Exactly.
if we all, once you really read the gospel and you understand and you start trying to live your life according to that way, you have that little conviction and that voice inside your head that does
exactly. And one of the, I mean, we like to talk about the big bucks and the hunts and all the stuff. We love it because that's what we enjoy doing. But some of the greatest things of my hunting career has been baptizing some of my hunting buddies.
Wow.
That may not have ever stepped into that or accepted Jesus had they not gotten to spend some time with me,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really the ultimate goal, is to try to set a good example as good as you can. And listen, we're all sinners. We know that we're all going to fall short at times. There's always going to be something that we could have done different, could have said different, could have done more, but we do the best we can. And as long as we're trying hard, that's what matters. And so, that's been one of the greatest I mean, there's nothing more gratifying than having a buddy call up and say, man, can you baptize me tonight?
Oh man,
tomorrow?
Yeah, that'd be powerful.
Or I mean, I had a couple walk up to me that taught with they like to hunt and fish, and they were teachers with my wife. My wife was a guidance counselor and special ed teacher for years. And they walked up to me and her at the theater one night and said, hey man, this is kind of awkward. And I was like, no, dude, what's up? And I was thinking something bad, I kind of was worried about him. He's like, man, would you baptize me and Jessica this weekend on Saturday?
Wow.
What? Of course, we'd be honored. I was like, started crying. I was so moved at the fact that they would ask me to do that, So those are the things, my niece, I have a niece that has a daughter, and she asks, and there's a lot of people in my family that are Christians that she could have asked for them to have baptized her. And she asked Uncle Spook to, and I mean, that was priceless to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I don't know if you guys know my buddy Slim from down in Mississippi Slim, but he's a big old guy, 400 plus pounds, and I went down this road with him and through the years and ended up baptizing Slim. We were actually on a hunt in Ohio I think we were there in October, but it's still pretty chilly. I took him out in the river next door and baptized him while we was on the hunt. It was pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
So those opportunities and privileges are an honor, and I hope that and I've been fortunate enough, and that was also something that was fun about spending time in the stand that day on the turkey hunt with Mr. David Hale, and just getting to soak in some of those things that he had been a part of. And so that's the the ultimate goal in this. If the main thing it does is help me provide a platform to help lead somebody to Christ in some way, then it's been worth it.
Yeah.
So I hope that people will take it real serious, and I actually believe with all my heart that we've seen a change in America the last few years.
I do too, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a lot more athletes thanking God on camera.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing more movie stars like Mel Gibson and these guys starting a non-woke, production companies that if you're not, doesn't have a Christian based mentality, then you can't be in their movies.
Right. Yeah.
Are you guys getting these ads with Chris Pratt and Mark Wahlberg in them, like praying during the ad, like just ad of them praying?
Yeah, so those are two of the guys that,
Yeah.
you know, and Chris Pratt's been standing up for quite a while. He's been really one of the guys at the forefront of the movement. And then you got guys like, you know, Jason Aldean standing up for his song, and when CMT, you know, bucked up on him and didn't want to, you know, I said bucked up, by the way.
We got it.
You know, then they, in case, so hopefully nobody misunderstood what I said there. But and then Luke joins in, and Blake, and I'm friends with Blake, and I was really happy that Blake, you know, joined in support of Jason in that deal. And those things are, I'm just seeing a lot more. It's like Tennessee, you know, was playing Alabama Saturday, and that kid hit that big shot to win the game. And I was in the house yelling and screaming and jumping up and down, scared my granddaughter half to death, and celebrating the shot, you know, and they get him on camera, and he's all excited, and Tennessee crowd's going crazy, and his teammates are patting him on the head. And, you know, the guy's a brother. He's got dreadlocks, you know, and it's not, they're interviewing him. And, you know, he said, man, I just want to thank God for the opportunity and the blessing to be here, and the blah, blah, blah. And I mean, it's like, oh, man, that's so freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And he didn't go into anything about himself or anything else before he did that. And I don't push it down people's throat. It don't take people long to figure out where I stand on things. And, you know, if you want to talk about it, I'm more than happy to talk about it. And if you don't, then don't wait till you're ready, you know. But no, I'm really excited about, I see a change coming on in America. And I've been friends with Willie and Phil Robinson for several years, and Phil has just been amazing. And so is Willie and Chase, and those guys have done a tremendous job at taking their redneck ways and converting, because men are men, and we as especially country guys, and we tend to think that for some weird reason that being a Christian is not masculine. I don't know what it is about somebody thinks sometimes that you're being less of a man if you become a Christian, which is ridiculous, you know. But guys like us, you guys and me, and even more so, I think, with Willie and Phil and Chase and different people like that, have made it more comfortable for guys to accept it and see that it's okay and not be ashamed of it.
Right.
So I just think that it's just, you know, and I'm so proud of these people in, you know, Hollywood and music and sports, and, you know, and as bad as the media keeps trying to cut it out, they can't cut it out when it's live.
No, it's great. There's really
the person is big enough, like Jason Aldean or Blake or Luke or, you know, Dana White or Joe Rogan, you guys, you know, everybody.
Yeah, we're right up there. Same guys.
Baby, I got you. And so, you know, we have to do, regardless of what level we think we're at on that, we still have an obligation to maximize the opportunity. And I'm, you know, I don't know if you knew or not that I've started my own podcast, and we have the 11th.
I was going to transition into that with the 11th commandment, you know.
Yeah, and which plays off of the Bible a little bit, and but there again, we've got to realize that in the end, none of this matters. I can't take any of this with me, you know, and hopefully it's just a platform to help lead somebody to a happier life by, you know, coming to Jesus. And I have strong beliefs about it, obviously, and I'm glad that it came up, and I'm glad to hear you guys do a Bible session. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like that I've heard because I've been going to church, and matter of fact, I got my first spanking when I was 9 months old for crying in church. My dad took me out and spanked me at 9 months. He got chastised for severely by his mother afterwards. But anyways, so that's how long I've been going to church. I went to every church camp, every activity that we ever had growing up. And so I've heard every sermon and lesson and Sunday school lesson that's exist, you know. And so something that I do find really, really awesome, you guys ought to check into, is a book called, oh my gosh, I just went blank as many times as I've talked about that book. I'll think of it, and if I don't, I'll text it to you or something. There's a particular book that I'm sitting here. I've read the book 3 times. I'm sitting here struggling, trying to remember the name of it. That's what happens when you get old. But anyhow, it's a really good, like, more modern day based story about a guy that was struggling with his upbringing and with church and Christianity, and it was actually based out of Nashville. And the guy that wrote the book is from Southern Illinois, and he moved to Nashville because he started a new job. And so it's a really really good book. It's all Bible based. He backs everything up with Bible verses and scripture, and it's really good. I'm so mad at myself. I've actually got 2 out in the truck. I just have gone brain dead on the name of it, but it's really good. I'll send it to you. But anyways, yeah, I'm hopefully, you know, these things we're doing will help somebody along the way, and there's no doubt in my mind that when you become a Christian, the minute you rise up out of that water, you're going to feel a burden off of you, and you're going to be a happier person.
Uh-huh.
You know, if you're going to quit worrying about what you don't have or what somebody else has got that you don't have or what they're doing, or you know, it's just once you accept Jesus, that so much of that hatred or whatever it is, disgruntledness or disappointment or whatever, goes away.
Yep.
It's not going to go away until you do that.
Yeah.
I
think everybody too. I always say it on our show. Everybody needs to read the gospel. I mean, everybody. If you haven't and you decide to follow Christ and you don't read the gospel,
yeah,
selling yourself short, because you really don't know what you're following until you read the gospel. And the gospel changed my life.
Exactly. Muscle. Okay, so it just hit me. I knew it would once I quit talking. Muscle and Shovel is the name of the book.
Muscle and Shovel.
Muscle and Shovel. It's freaking awesome. But and you're right. I mean, you don't. It seems like pie in the sky until you read the Bible.
Yep.
Now, for me, I was raised in the church, so I heard it all for years and years and years, which is sometimes can be, it's a blessing, but it also can be a curse, because sometimes you've heard it so much that you take it for granted and you don't put as much importance on it as you should. And so then there will be some time in life where maybe you're not paying as much attention or thinking about it as much as you should. You're thinking about earthly things more, like killing a big buck or buying a new truck or getting a better job or starting a podcast or whatever it is, you know. But then you learn there comes a time, especially when you have kids, you're saying, okay, I got to straighten my butt up and get back to the basics, you know.
Yeah, that's my story, Spook. I was raised Lutheran in our Lutheran church, went to a Lutheran school, you know, Sunday school since I was you know, old enough to talk. And yep. So kind of in your 20s, you kind of you're just there, and you know you're a Christian, but it don't really mean anything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, shoot, man, us guys, we're horrible. Our hormones are like jacked up, and we're, doing what we're doing, chasing girls, and doing different things. And so it just it seems like everybody has to go through that
Yeah.
problem. You just hope you live through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, I had great parents.
Yeah.
And I grew up at a sawmill with guys that were heathens,
Yeah.
I mean, drank and smoked and treated themselves like as bad as and did everything under the sun. None of them finished school. And I've seen them almost die. I've seen them, I went with daddy to get them out of jail so they'd be at work on Monday. I've seen them, gagging on their own puke and everything else. And when you see that at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, and they look at you on Monday and say, boy, don't you ever start this stuff. It'll kill you. It'll ruin your life. You listen.
Yeah.
I had two grandfathers that were both my grandfathers were alcoholics. And I had a cousin that killed herself because she was an alcoholic. And so having an obsessive personality, I decided the best thing for me. And I truly did. I love to play ball and hunt and fish so much. I didn't want to do anything that would mess that up. So I've never drank in my life, ever. And I've never smoked. I've never done any drugs. I've never, just because I saw what it did to people at a very young age, and it scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
It wasn't just mom and daddy saying don't do it. It just wasn't the Sunday school preacher or the preacher saying don't do it. It was the guys that I was watching
Do it.
die and puking and gagging and getting put in jail and getting beat up and all this stuff. And my dad rehabilitated an alcoholic one time, and we come out of the house one morning in the summer to go to work, and he was laying balled up in a ball in our driveway and had ran from the police that night through the woods about 5 miles to our house to hide.
Mm.
And daddy told him he worked for daddy when he was sober. And he said, Dudley, I'm getting tired of this. He said, you're either going to straighten up or you're never going to, or I'm done with you. He said, I've got that little RV at the sawmill. I'll move it down here. You live in it a year and you don't drink for a year, I'll build you a new house. He lived in that RV for a year. My dad started building a new house, built him a new house right behind ours where all his cronies couldn't get to him. And they were scared to death of my mom and my dad. My mom was 5'2", and she would stand there and point straight up at you and chew you out. She didn't care if you thought, and built him a house, and he never drank again. And
that's awesome.
So, cool. I saw as a kid, a very young kid, the worst of the worst. And so I had no desire to even consider it,
Yeah.
And I heard stories about my grandfather on my mom's side, beating my grandmother up and stuff and things like that. And, I never even knew that grandfather for that reason, because once she finally got away from him, she never went back. And
just out of curiosity, were they World War II veterans, 1 and 2?
No, they weren't. My dad was in the military for a while, but and when I was growing up, my dad casually drank beer. We'd be fishing. He might drink 2 or 3 in a day or something, or after work on a hot summer day. But then Daddy, when I was probably in high school, my dad got baptized again and recommitted himself to Christ, and he stopped everything. He stopped smoking. He stopped drinking beer, even though my dad never seen my dad drunk, and even not even close. I mean, the most I've ever seen him drink is 1 or 2 beers.
Right.
Maybe 3 on a July day on the lake when we're fishing from daylight to dark. That's it, And he quit everything completely. And So, and I actually passed up a 3-digit sponsorship one time from a beer company for the show. And I got tons of buddies. I was a designated driver in college, for make sure my teammates got home okay. I sat around the campfire with buddies drinking beer. That's doesn't bother me in the least. It's just not what I choose to do, because I'm scared I may not be the guy who can quit.
Yeah.
Like my grandfathers and an uncle I had and my cousin and different ones, and so I just choose not to go there. But also because I wanted to set a good example for my kids, and I passed up that. And the guy said, well, it doesn't matter that you don't drink. It's like you have buddies that drink and you're hunting buddies that drink. And I said, yeah, but I was just like, I can't have this stance and then turn around and take money from a beer company. And then how am I going to explain that to my kids?
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't.
I just didn't do it,
Yeah.
And
you can't bring people to Christ by being a hypocrite.
Yeah. And so, with all that being said, that's just the path I chose, and I've been tickled to death. And I'm so fortunate. My wife's the same way. She grew up in a community where there was only 2 of them, 2 girls in the whole place that didn't drink, the whole high school. And, but, God put us together, and it's been the greatest thing that ever happened to me is her. And, so, that's just the path that we choose, and we don't look down on anybody for if they do. I've got, like I said, probably 75% of my buddies do.
Yeah.
You're never going to be in a hunting camp where most of the guys aren't going to be having a beer occasionally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's no big deal to me. I could, if they need me to take them home, I'll take them home.
There you go.
But so it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Spook. We've been on here for 2 hours now. So
really, I thought it just been about 30 minutes.
Yeah, no, it goes fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, I could keep talking. It was awesome.
Man, I appreciate you guys having me. You guys are awesome, and I really appreciate it. You're great.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, Spook. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I didn't know Spook before we got on here tonight. We have a mutual friend named Mike, and he got us together. But we'll have to have you back on
anytime, any sense.
Yeah. We had some questions in the comment section about trail cameras. We may get on here sometime with you and just talk strategy or something.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get into more. A lot of times your first podcast is a lot of just getting to know a person and and we've kind of went there. So now we can get into some good stuff. I mean, not that it's not all good. Shouldn't have said it that way. We can get into deeper stuff.
We can talk about Jesus too one time on one of our
absolutely. I don't claim to be a big scholar when it comes to the Bible, but I know right from wrong.
Oh, we don't either, but we try to pretend to be one on a podcast.
Yeah. I have a hard time referring to Scripture, but I know what the Bible says, and so I'm good with that. And that's one thing Muscle and Shovel really helped me with too. It's strong. It'll hurt your feelings. I'm just telling you right now.
I'll look that book up, and I got a lot of time in the squad car. I'll get it for some reading material. And
I hate reading. I've always hated it. Hated it in school. It was the best I could do was make it through a North American whitetail Dick Idle story. But I started reading that book in moose camp one year. Was in Alaska, and we was having some bad weather and getting stuck in the tent some. And so I read that book in about 3 or 4 days in moose camp. And we actually put it on the show, and I told the story about reading the book in the moose hunt story episode. And Michael Shane, the guy who wrote the story, wrote the book, contacted me on social media. He heard about it.
Oh, nice.
And we posted some things about it on social media. And he's like, man, he said, where are you buying those? And I said, I'm getting them from a friend. I said, he's ordering them. He said, man, he said, and so I was starting to take them to speaking engagements and giving them away at speaking engagements. And he's like, man, he's like, don't buy any more. He said, I'll send them to you by the cases. He said, if you're gonna share that with people and you're gonna promote that on, the things you do, he said, I'll send you
Yeah,
all
that's
of
it. That's the book right there for
Yeah.
anybody.
Yep.
I actually ordered a used one on Amazon just a minute ago.
Did you? Yeah, I'm going to order one too.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty cool.
You will. There again, everything he says, he's going to back it up with scripture, and he's going to hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
I think it will be one of the most. I think you'll like it, especially you guys. And I tell you what, it's really helped me with, because I'm not very good at quoting scripture, and that book allowed me I use it as a tool to help other people, like my buddy Slim. I told my buddy Slim, we were on a week hunt. I said, will you read this book? He was asking me a question. He said, yeah, I'll read it. I said, will you read it this week? He said, yeah. I said, I promise you, when you get done, you're a smart person. It will be crystal clear. I promise. He looked at me like he's never looked at me. I said, I promise. And when he got done on the third day, he read it in 3 days. It's a pretty big book, He said, I get it. He says, I get it. And he was getting ready to leave the hunt. Something come up. He was getting ready to leave. He said, well, I'm going to take care of it. I said, so you're going to drive 10 hours home without getting baptized? I said, you willing to take that chance? And he looked at me he's a big old dude. He looked at me with a puppy dog look. And I said, he said, no. I said, well, let's go right now. Let's go to the river, change your clothes, and let's go,
That's awesome.
And so we did, so I'm really glad, if nothing else, tonight I get to tell you about the book, and you're going to enjoy the read, and just know that you're going to get your feelings hurt, and
Yeah,
that needs to happen sometimes.
But you're good guys, you're gonna and just go into it with an open mind and an open heart, and it'll change. It's gonna help you a lot, and like I said, it's helped me so much as a tool with other people, and then they started using it as a tool, and then that person starts using it as a tool, because the Bible can be a little bit intimidating with the way they use their words, and the where art thous and all the things can actually get a little confusing sometimes. And so this actually, which is what was happening to Michael Shank, and this guy named Randall is giving him clarity with the scripture.
Okay.
So that's where a lot of it's at. And it's happening in the workplace. It happened in the 80s in Nashville. So it's kind of cool.
I always my big thing I tell everybody is 6 minutes a day. You can read your Bible 6 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And that gets that makes it easier. And that what happens is you start reading it 6 minutes. Next thing you know, you're reading it 2 times a day, then 3 times a day, then you read it 30 minutes a day. God doesn't care whether you read it 6 minutes or for 2 hours. He just wants you to.
What I tried to do, I started out trying to read a chapter a morning. So, which you could probably pretty much read a chapter in 5 or 6 minutes,
Yeah.
I would just try to read a chapter, mark my spot every day, just read a chapter,
Yeah.
So I try to do a lot like that. But I've been very, very fortunate. I've had some really good preachers over the years. I mean, fabulous preachers that were very smart, entertaining, could keep you in. It's easy to start off listening, and it's easy to get sidetracked within 10 to 15 minutes of the sermon. These guys were really good at keeping you engaged for 30 or 40 minutes, or sometimes 45 or 50 minutes. But so I've had some really good preachers over the years, which has been a big blessing. But anyways, it's all great. Thanks for having me. And we could sit here and talk all night. But,
I know. We'll definitely have to have you on again. Tell everybody where they can find you.
In Jesus, we can sit here.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Leave to me and Patrick. We usually end up talking about deer hunting for about half the time. Then we get into politics, or we get into
Oh
Jesus.
my gosh! Don't get me started on that.
Yeah, no.
You and Patrick, I may have to
I
go
have
to
my
bed.
Trump hat on next round.
Yeah.
Usually Patrick's name is not Patrick, it's MAGA or whatever you always put down there. Patrick, I don't know.
MAGA or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell them about your podcast and Spook Nation and everything you have
Yeah,
going
man,
on.
I'm so excited. I mean, we just started in February, the 11th Commandment by Spook Nation. My buddy Brian Stevens is really good for me because I'm not a techie person, so I got to have somebody to help me with all this stuff. I'm not a good speaker, but I can talk a lot, as you can tell. And Brian is good at teeing up questions for me, kind of like what you guys have done tonight. And we've been friends for a long time, and we spent time in camp before, so he knows how to get me, going and keeping. But he also, the most important thing about, Brian, I love so much, is he's taking care of the integral parts and keeping us organized and on point and on schedule and keeping things edited and posted. And so I'm real thankful for him and what he's doing. And I'm just contributing most of the talking.
There you go.
But there's very few people that's been doing it for 50 years, and so I've been doing it a long time, hunting and have learned a lot and been very blessed. And so I think I can help guys and then also hopefully do it in a positive, manner where you can see that. Hopefully I can do it in a way that you can see that I'm a Christian, and whether we talk about it or not, you get it, know that I'm serious about my family. And I try not to do anything at the expense of anything to do with the family. They always come first. God, and my motto used to be on my first shirts. My first Spook Nation shirts was God, Family, Country. And it was me praying over a buck. So, that's, I try to always give thanks. And the one time that I remember, I always try to say a prayer when I get on an airplane because I'm nervous about planes. And the only time in my life I remember not saying a prayer before I took off was in Kyrgyzstan when I got on a helicopter and I was being saved from a blizzard, and I forgot to say a prayer. 10 minutes into the flight, we crashed and 2 people got killed. And I was like, okay, I won't ever forget again.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Wow. So there was my reminder. Somebody was listening to my prayers when I was on.
Yeah. Well, how about this? Next time you get on, we'll start with that story.
That's fine.
All right, let's hop off here. Everybody, thanks for
guys.
listening.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Nice talking to you. Awesome.